What does it truly mean to serve? Is leadership about power or about responsibility? Welcome to Your Stewardship, a compelling new radio program that shines the spotlight on individuals in positions of service and the impact they've made or are still making on the people they serve. From public officials to community leaders, from the health sector to education and beyond, we ask the tough questions. Have they been accountable? Have they delivered? Have they truly served? This is more than just a conversation. It is a moment of reflection, transparency, and truth. Join us as we explore real stories, real challenges, and real outcomes, because stewardship is not just a title, it's a duty. Your Stewardship: service, accountability, and impact.
Good day and welcome to Your Stewardship, the program where leadership meets accountability and where legacies are examined beyond titles and applause. I am Remy Allen. Today we'll be hosting a distinguished legal luminary, a senior advocate of Nigeria, former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Ekiti State. Please join me as we welcome Dayo Akinlaja, SAN, to Your Stewardship. It's nice having you.
Yes, good afternoon. My pleasure being with you today.
All right. So many people know Dayo Akinlaja, SAN, the accomplished lawyer, but who is the man behind the wig and the gown?
Well, thank you. Let me start by appreciating you because I feel somewhat flattered by your encomiums. I appreciate. Dayo Akinlaja was born in Ikere, Ekiti State, about 60 years ago. I did my primary school education at Ikere St. Luke's Primary School. I attended that towards Amayi Grammar School Ikere, from where I ventured to University of Benin, where I did my law studies. In 1991, I was at the Nigerian Law School. Got called to the bar in December 1991. I have been practicing law ever since. I did my NYC program in the esteemed law office of Wadolani Pekwanko, here in Ilorin then, and I was retained at the end of the good service. Afterwards, I branched out to set up the law firm of Dayo Akinlaja in 1985. To the glory of God, I've been doing my law practice ever since. And as you mentioned in your intro, I was appointed Attorney General in Ekiti State. That was between 2010 and 2013. By the grace of God, in 2012, I became elevated to the prestigious rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria. By the grace of God, likewise, I'm married, left with children, two of whom are now lawyers.
Good to know. Good to know. Let's go to your work as a lawyer. In the past, you have publicly advocated for the use of plea bargains in Nigeria, arguing that prolonged judicial delays mean the state waste resources. Trying to jail corrupt official when it should focus on the rapid recovery of looted funds. Looking at the country today, do you still hold that view?
In all honesty, I still do. Because my honest conviction is that as much as it is imperative to put people in jail, at least to serve as deterrent to others, but the reality is that when everything is taken into consideration, I strongly believe that, especially against the backdrop of our judicial system, which is almost endless in terms of length of time, in terms of, so I would strongly hold to the view that it is better if we can, what should be of prime importance to us is to recover money, right? And that we can easily do through the instrumentality of a plea bargain. So the whole idea of wasting so many years going on ending prosecution, which at the end of the day we will not even be able to foretell how it will end. But the reality is that if you are able to get good money in good time, then we can deploy the money judiciously and righteously. So I still hold the view that a plea bargain, should still be our watchword at whatever event, it is said that to every general rule, there is at least an exception. So there may well be veritable instances where it is just proper that people should be put in jail, maybe on account of the horrendous nature of corruption, the enormity of it, and whatnot. But overall, I'm of the humble view that it serves us better as a nation to employ plea bargain.
Okay, my learned silk. A lot of people don't hold that argument. As critics have argued that prioritizing plea bargains over street sentences for high-profile looters actually creates two-tiered justice system. This is where the rich can simply buy their freedom with a fraction of what they stole, while ordinary citizens face harsh jail term for minor offenses. As a former Attorney General, how do you reconcile the administrative convenience of recovering funds with the moral obligation of deterrence and equal justice under the law?
Well, I guess I have to put this in proper perspective. By advocating for plea bargain does not necessarily mean that people should not be sentenced to jail terms, right? Remember that I did mention that to every general rule, there must be at least an exception. My point is that it is not always that it becomes imperative to send people to jail. If the circumstances so demand and dictate, it will be genuinely saying that this is a special case where it is just too important, right?
Yes.
That this person should be put in jail. But I must also stress that by my own idea of a plea bargain does not really negate or dispense with jail terms. It can be a reduced jail time. But the important thing is that there must be some measure of incentivization that will enable the country to recover resources, right? Because we need money, right? But I'm not saying that people should be given a slap on the sort of punishment, right? My point is that there are instances where it is simply very imperative that the focus should be at recovering the money. You know, there are some instances where the circumstances will demand that it is only fair and fair that against the backdrop of the enormity of crime involved in this particular instance, it is only proper that apart from recovering money, this person should be put where it actually belongs. But my point is, there should be a balance, because in the final analysis, if all efforts are concentrated at dealing looters without
thinking of recovery,
exactly. So we should strike a balance.
Okay.
Strike a balance. I'm not in the least advocating that anybody should be encouraged with a punishment that may amount to a slap on the wrist. That's not my point.
Okay. Also, my learned senior, you fought a legendary multi-year battle all the way to Supreme Court, to reinstate the Uniloring 49, proving that institutional tyranny can be defeated. Decades later, however, we still see public institutions, state boards, and corporate bodies in Nigeria routinely flouting civil service rules and victimizing workers. Why has our legal victory over institutional impunity failed to translate into a cultural shift of internal accountability within public organizations?
A major cause of that, in my honest view, is with the unsalutary, if I may put it that way, nature of our judicial system. Unsalutary in the sense that it takes so long in time for matters to be concluded. And when it is realized that justice does not come in due time in Nigeria, there is a tendency for people to seriously take advantage of that system. If it were to be a situation where justice can be spent within the space of maximum of 5 years between the commencement of the matter, let's say at the industrial court now and court of appeal, which is terminal point, if it takes something like maximum of 2 years, I'm sure any institution, will think twice before engaging anything that might amount to flouting the law. But because of the fact that the dispensation of justice does not come expeditiously in Nigeria. So there is a tension on the part of the functionary, public functionaries, to take seriously take undue advantage of the system that does not run efficiently and effectively. So that is just the basic issue. The reality is that we need to work radically on our judicial system to ensure that at the maximum, from high court to the Supreme Court, where a matter gets to the Supreme Court, it should not take beyond maximum 5 years.
But how can we achieve this? How can we achieve this? Because it seems it's a major problem in the judicial system.
It is possible, but it will take a lot of political will and the utmost commitment on part of everybody. For instance, there is no way we can think of achieving this objective without engaging in a radical overhaul of our constitutional provisions, right? In my honest view, the Supreme Court here in Abuja is not adequately put in place. It's not in an adequate position to attend myriad of cases, that culminate at the Supreme Court. For instance, there are so many cases. There are cases as far back as like 2010, if not earlier, that are still there in the Supreme Court dockets now, and nobody is hearing anything about that. Under such a situation, but my point is that if we can, for instance, have Supreme Court at the level of 6 geopolitical zones, I want to that would effectively ensure that there is much speedier dispensation of justice. But of course, this will have to involve taking with the Constitution as it is, right? Again, there are so many other things to be done, even at the level of the stakeholders, on the part of the judge, on the part of the legal practitioners, and the users of our court system. It has to be it's something that we really need to work on, with utmost commitment. We have to set a target for ourselves and ensure that we all work towards attaining that target. It is doable, but it will take a lot of
political will and commitment. Yes, like you said.
The will on the part of everyone.
Yes, it's something that has to be done. Then let's talk about your stewardship as the Attorney General of Ekiti State. The office of Attorney General is often caught between loyalty to the government and loyalty to the law. Can you recall instances where those interests conflicted, and how did you navigate?
Yes, thank you. That's a very interesting and stimulating one. Now, when I was Attorney General, let me preface my response to this. I just got into that office by virtue of my professional works. I was never into politics. And by reason of that, when eventually I got into that office, I could see that there was a world of difference between my background as a legal practitioner, a private practitioner, and somebody who was expected to learn this with law practice. Regrettably, or otherwise, I was on bench. Regrettably, to those. Now, let me give you an instance. At some point, we had like 2 or 3 matters at the High Court. Like then, the court affronted. They found it unspeakable. They found it unthinkable. They found it totally unexpected that the state government should lose the matter. But I made it plain to everybody clear to this that I was a court practitioner, that I got to the office of Attorney General by no other thing than dint of my dedication and diligence as a lawyer. That was what made the governor then see me as appointable. So I made it clear to them that I will not go out of my way to do anything that would be unethical, to do anything that would be in consonance with the etiquette of my profession. And that was what I stopped. People went to the extent of making derogatory remarks that they had never come across an attorney general of my kind that will be losing cases serially. That was even the way they put it. But then, thankfully, the then governor saw with me. He did not apply undue pressure on me. He told me that I should have it my way because I told him that, Your Excellency, if I was not convinced that we had good cases, that would have been the first to advise you that we should settle this matter. But I genuinely believed that, excuse me, I genuinely believed that the state had a good case in each of these matters. And as God will have it, of course, I took the matters to the Court of Appeal. To the God, I won the 3 matters in one day, in one first swoop, at the Court of Appeal level. You know, so ordinarily, maybe I'm not trying to be immodest or boastful about it. Probably some other person would have given in to pressures and try to do one thing or the other to but I stuck to my gun, and happily enough, I can say it, beating my chest, that nobody when I was all through my tour of office as Attorney General, I did not approach any judicial officer. I did not approach anybody to. I did everything I could to ensure that the Ministry of Justice worked, ran efficiently and effectively, in the best tradition of what the practice of law should be. So my honest belief is that it takes the person of Attorney General, right, to dictate what is right or compromise. I chose not to compromise. I stood on what I believed, and to the glory of God, I was vindicated at the end of the day.
Luckily for you, you had a governor who also understood. Peradventure, let's talk about future occupants of that same position. If they had a governor who is also on their neck that they can't say no to, how should such person navigate that ethical tightrope?
Well, the interesting thing, I without meaning to be modest again, if the governor had not seen the things from my perspective, if he had chosen to say, go and handle it the quote and unquote the Nigerian way, of course I would have been too delighted to tender my resignation letter. There and then, I would have said, well, Your Excellency, at this point in time, I will be forced to take my exit.
That's one thing we don't get to see in Nigeria. A lot of people don't tend to tender resignation when things are not going their way.
Well, that may be the tragedy of our system. You see, let me tell you, of course, you may recall that I did not end the 4-year term in that office. For reasons that are not necessarily important at this time. But my point is that the very next day that I left office as Attorney General in the state, I appeared at the Federal High Court in Lagos. What does that suggest? That means, in a manner of speaking, to use political balance, I had a second advance. So it was very comfortable and convenient for me to call the bluff of anybody. So if you, as a private practitioner, you have been practicing your law and you have some sense of fear of God in you and contentment, there is no reason as a lawyer why you should not be able to tell your acquaintance that, look, I cannot work against the dictates of my conscience. But in the final analysis, it boils down to the person and personality of the incumbent of that office. This is what I would have done, speaking for myself. If it comes to this again tomorrow, if by providence I find myself in the public office again, I assure you that I will stay truthful to my conscience.
All right. As Attorney General, what specific reforms did you introduce that outlived your tenure, and how can Ekiti people still see that impact today?
Well, if there's a legacy that I think I can comfortably and justifiably talk about, it is that I brought into the office of Attorney General in Ekiti the level of dexterity and dedication that I committed to law practice. Right? The impression on ground when I got here was like without meaning to be derogatory, without meaning to be unfair to anybody, the impression was that, well, government business, government business. But when I came into that office, when they saw me work the way I was working, people had to tag along. I would be in the office past 7 p.m. There were instances where there would be no light that I would have to put on torchlights or lamps to be working, writing briefs. I was not given to delegating works unnecessarily. I was the one doing all my briefs. I was the one doing all the professional works. So when they saw this, I guess that a number of them were really impressed that this was like almost very different from what they had got used to. So my point is that, to the glory of God today, among the people that were under me then, two of them are judges. And it was on account of their hard work, which, without meaning to be, again, ill-modest, I was able to impart, the sense of diligence, sense of duty on the people under me. I was not I was not giving out assignments. I would work, then I would give to people to type lately, I would dictate. So I did not give anything. So my point is that I can boast my chest, to the glory of God Almighty, that I was able to lead by example. So much so, by the time that I was leaving, there had been a radical turnaround the attitude of the lawyers in the ministry to their work.
All right. So, what will you identify? Okay. Okay, go on.
Beyond that, before I came to because the state was relying on the laws from Ondo State. To the glory of God, I was one that completed the process of indigenizing laws of Ekiti. Today we now have laws of Ekiti State. That came into fruition. Although my predecessor in office had started the process, but I was the one that God used
follows through
to consummate the process.
All right.
So many other things.
Okay. In all of this, what would you say is your biggest success and your biggest regret, if there is any, during your time as Attorney General?
Well, my biggest success again will be that I was able to impart positively on people, on the lawyers, especially the lawyers in the ministry. Through me, a good number of them came to know how to write appellate briefs, how to write addresses, right? So in a way, of course, I'm not trying to be envious of what they have been doing against anybody. But my point is that when I came in and I brought a good number of them who are not before then probably interested in going to court, they became enamored with litigation. So it was a total turnaround in the office, and to the glory of God, it's today. Well, my number one joy is that when I come across those people in the ministry, they will always attest to the fact that I brought utmost competence, diligence, and dedication to duty to that office.
All right. Apart
Talk
from
about regret, in all honesty, and God is my witness, I have no regret whatsoever. Let me tickle you. God decided me to get to that office, to accomplish the few things I was able to accomplish, and beyond that, to use that office to become a senior advocate of Nigeria. Of course, I should mention that I had applied on 2 previous occasions to become SCN before I came to the office of Attorney General. But the point is that if I had become senior advocate of Nigeria in private practice, it would not have attracted the same glamour, right? It would not have attracted the same pomp and pageantry that it did for me in that office. So I believe that was the sheer objective, from God for me. So when eventually after like after 2 years, there was a cabinet reshuffle and I was not returned, I knew that God just sent me to that office. Apart from contributing my little quota to developments of the ministry, God wanted me to use it as a more grandeur platform for me to become a advocate of Nigeria.
Okay, so despite not spending the 4 years term, because you said there are a lot of things to read that you don't want to mention, there are no regrets at all, especially because you were able to use that office to get your senior advocate position. All right, now was there a justice delivered that's a remarkable, a big justice delivered under your leadership that you might want to mention, apart from the three you earlier talked about?
Apart from the three, I can't recall any major, because essentially that's so because I used my things, as attorney general to settle a lot of matters that ordinarily would have developed into endless, litigation. So I was able to bring to bear, my personality to settle a lot of cases. So by reason of that, there were no many instances that the case had to go to court under me.
Okay.
Chieftaincy matters, I would broker peace, I would settle this and that, and so on and so forth. So that was it.
All right. So the rank of Senior Advocate of Nigeria (SAN) is an honor of stewardship to Nigerian jurisprudence. Yet there is a growing public cynicism that elite legal minds use their vast mastery of the law to delay high-profile corruption, cases indefinitely, which you have also mentioned, effectively shielding, bad actors from accountability. Is the inner bar doing enough to police its own members, or has the legal profession inadvertently become an enabler of systemic impunity in Nigeria?
Well, in all honesty and speaking candidly, I'm not in a position to say whether or not anything is being done in that regard. I can only speak for myself. I know for sure that I've never used my position as a senior advocate to, in whatever way or manner, delay hearing of matters or cause injustice in whatever way or form. So, in all honesty, I've tried my level best to practice law in the best tradition of the profession, and it will not be fair for me to impute to others anything to the contrary. So I think it's a case of in which I would say I cannot be a judge of my own cause. But all I know is that whether it is through the imagination of anybody, I know that our system is not running effectively and efficiently as it should be run. But it is not for me to say this is the prime cause of it or otherwise. All I can say, without any fear of contradiction, is that I've always used my personal position to ensure that justice is done and expeditiously done for that matter.
Nigeria continues to struggle with delays in justice delivery. We have people who are awaiting trial for many years, more than the crime that they are being charged for. What can we do differently to change the narrative?
Well, I must agree that the situation is not only tragic, it is doubly troubling. That people who just on occasions have spent more time that ordinarily the law requires them to serve, upon conviction. So the situation is, to say the very least, highly concerning. The point is that it's still part of what we have to come into place in the process of rejigging, and re-evaluating our judicial system. It's part of the things that we have to work on, generally speaking, at the level of civil as well as criminal proceedings. there is a need for us to tinker with our judicial system in such a way that court proceedings will come to, expeditious end. That's when we can call it justice. As it is often said, justice delayed, justice denied.
Justice
So my
denied.
point is that there is a need for us to carry out a number of reforms, but maybe by way of immediate remedy. There is a provision for the chief judge of a state, for instance, to visit prisons, in a situation where people have been in detention, beyond tolerable time on account of what ordinarily their punishment would have carried. It is only proper that. Now, let me give you an instance. When I was in office as Attorney General, we came to a conclusion that, look, anybody who has been in detention for upward of 12 years on account of a matter that did not attract capital punishment, where when there was no homicide or killing, and I made that proposal to the state government, and the state executive approved of it. So by reason of that, a number of people that had been languishing in jail for months of it, so they had to be released unconditionally. So I believe that this is the sort of thing that can still be done immediately without going the whole log of constitutional amendment or statutory amendments. At the immediate level, the chief judges are placed, by law, they are in a invited position to say that, okay, you have been in detention, pre-trial detention for what is too long and intolerable. So that on account of that, and I'm aware that chief judges do this from time to time, but whether it still has to be worked more on that, whether it's something that has to be accelerated and expanded, that may well be the issue. But I agree with you wholeheartedly that there is an imperative need for us to work on radically changing, the laws of our judicial system.
All right. Let me quickly ask you this. That's talking about the uni-lawyering issue that I mentioned earlier. What even motivated you to continue that case?
Well, it was a case of no option. Because I had no option. And let me stress that I was involved with a senior colleague whose name is John Baishia SCN. We were together and we are like minds. We are soulmates. The two of us. So it was a veritable case of no retreat,
no surrender.
Because it was quite evident that defeat will only have brought about internal injustice, and I was not prepared for injustice for existing, not to talk of internal injustice. So that the motivating factor was that we just knew that there must be justice somewhere, and we courageously fought on, and to the glory of God, justice came.
The justice came at the end of the day. All right, you're tuned to your Stewardship on Orange 94.5 FM and OSRC Television. Wherever you're following us from, thank you for being part of the program. We'll take a moment and return shortly to continue this insightful discussion. Don't go away.
What does it truly mean to serve? Is leadership about power or about responsibility? Welcome to Your Stewardship, a compelling radio program that shines the spotlight on individuals in positions of service and the impact they've made or are still making on the people they serve.
Welcome back. If you just tuned in, it's Your Stewardship on Orange 94.5 FM and OSRC Television. You can listen to us live on Radio Garden. You can also follow us on Facebook, Orange 94.5 FM, Instagram, Orange 94.5 FM, and on X handle is at Orange 945 FM, and on YouTube you can subscribe to our channel Orange 94.5 FM. You can also watch us on our sister station, OSRC TV on Facebook. Subscribe to our channel, OSRC TV Ondo, on YouTube. And on more place, you can watch us on 720 Free TV 760, where all of those channels for you to join this conversation. We are still with Dayo Akinlaja, SAN. All right, we are glad that you're still very much with us. You invested heavily in bringing elite legal infrastructure to Akure to elevate local bar. However, structural access to justice for the average citizen in the state remains agonizingly slow, which is like what we've been hammering on. And many young lawyers still struggle with poor remuneration and substandard conditions. Looking back at your years in the state, as the growth of elite private practice truly democratized justice for the common man in Ondo State?
Well, I honestly believe that between the time that I came to Akure and now, there has been some sort of phenomenal progress in the area of democratization of justice to people, or access to justice, on account of the fact, first, that there has been a wave of new lawyers, coming to town. And again, I'm of the conviction that the dynamics of the profession, over time has changed in such a way that people have come to see that there is no other alternative than to be hardworking, than to be diligent, and to be dexterous in the way and manner that law is practiced. And so there is a sort of development and progress, a radical positive turnaround in the way and manner law is practiced. And the reality is that when those who are upcoming, when they see the level of practice of those ahead of them, then it naturally rubs off on the people coming behind, right? So my belief is that within these years, there has been a phenomenon, like I said, a phenomenal turnaround in positive terms of the standard of practice in Akure especially.
Many Nigerians believe that the judiciary, lawyers, and judges alike are one of the problems we are facing as a nation, with conflicting judgments and interpretations of the Constitution. What say you about this? Because sometimes we see a case, it starts with let's say political. Sometimes it starts with a tribunal. This person is giving, saying you won or you didn't win. It goes to appeal. It's given to and like that, and so many conflicting judgments. Why so? What say you about this?
Well, my view about it is that when it is borne in mind that law is not science, it means that adjudication, dispensation of justice, is not the same thing as science. It is science that attracts precision and exactitude, right? The practice of law and judicial adjudication does not have that privilege. It does not have that. It does not have that kind of attribute. Since there is no level of exactitude, two people are looking at one may come close to a similar scenario. Chances are that they will look at it from different perspectives.
Different angle.
Right? Unlike mathematics, for instance, where 2 times 2 will always be 4. There is no room for that kind of exactitude and precision
in law.
Judicial dispensation in law. So my point is that, of course, it is something that we cannot rule out completely as an attribute of our judicial system. I think it happens. It's not necessarily limited, exclusive to Nigeria. In a situation where you have 2 or more people, try sitting over cases, aside from the fact that there may be some varying peculiarities that will not make what the to be a similar scenario, that will not make them exactly the same. Their surrounding circumstances, defining facts that may well make it mandatory that there must be some level of difference in terms of the way two or three matters that share some level of similarities go. So my point is that is essentially why we have the benefit of appellate courts. That is where we have the benefit of appellate courts. At the end of the day, it is what the Supreme Court says is the position that would be taken, the position of the law. The point I'm struggling to make here is that it is like a mirage.
It's not a rocket science.
Think that there will come it's not a rocket science. If you ever think that there will come a time that will not be some level of uncertainty, level of inconsistency, no, it is not possible. The point is that, of course, there are circumstances that make such a situation become worrisome. There may be clear instances where, for goodness sake, there is no reason why there should be this conflict.
Exactly.
In which case, maybe there are such circumstances.
There are also some circumstances where someone had to be thrown to jail for an offense such that person did not commit. Some will have spent years after being declared guilty. Eventually, they find out that this person is not guilty after all.
Sadly, and tragically so, this is nothing limited or exclusive to Nigeria. It is one of the vagaries of mankind. That a more advanced and a more sophisticated judicial systems, they are such in America, which is prided as the best of civilizations, modern civilizations. It happens.
I agree with you.
There have been instances we have been in jail for donkey years only to be found out that there was strong accusation and wrong conviction. So it is nothing that is limited to Nigeria. But of course, that does not mean that I'm advocating or I'm trying to excuse. I think overall, what is important is that anybody who is put in a position of adjudication should ensure that everything is done in terms of competence, in terms of probity, in all ramifications, to ensure that let it be said this person did the best under the limitations of being human. Under the limitations of, because in the final analysis, only God is perfect. But there are instances where people are about to wonder that what happened. That could have been any other occurrence. But my point is that in any human endeavor, there will be room for lapses.
Yes.
What we can hope and plead for is that anybody who is in position to adjudicate should do his or her level best to ensure that there is no room for any unnecessary suspicion. Once it is clear and evident that the judicial person or the judicial officer or jurist has done the right thing, mistake of the mind and not mistake of the head, mistake of the head or not mistake of the mind, that would be excusable. And I think it is a work in progress. As human beings, we are just aspiring towards perfection, but there is a level that will be intolerable. There will be a level that anybody who sees it that this is just a pure, genuine mistake, on the part of this person. So that is it. Overall, probity, competence, and utmost dedication are the attributes that will ensure that there is total justice.
Total justice. All right. So looking back at on your years in public office, in addition to private legal practice, what would you consider your most significant contribution to justice, to governance and public service, and how should the public measure your stewardship?
My position on that will simply be that I was able, in all the years, I've been able to give my utmost, to deploy my utmost endeavors in whatever I do in terms of my profession. I've applied due diligence. I've ensured that I've about over the years utmost diligence, utmost endeavors in anything I do, and that's the legacy. That's what I would want to be said of me, that that I try my level to whatever I do with rectitude. I do everything I do with rectitude of intentions. If I am not convinced that your matter is good as a client, I will tell you that look, you do not have
a good case.
So don't waste your money. Don't waste your money. So I've approached it from the level of, permit me to say, quote and unquote,
Omoluabi.
Exactly. So that is it. I practice law, with the fear of God and with the last duty owed to my conscience. So once my conscience is clear, so of course, I will give you my utmost best. And if I am not convinced, for whatever reason that no matter the level of money you may offer, I will tell you that look, just recently, somebody wanted to approach me that just on this their primaries, political primaries. Somebody approached me and he was ready to pay some good money, but I said, look, don't waste your time. You have not met, you have not been able to cross the requisite threshold for a good course of action. That so my legacy, if anything, if I can say it that way, is my admonition to lawyers is that look, practice according to the dictates of God and your conscience.
And your conscience.
I work with my conscience and nothing beyond that.
So if you had an opportunity to reform a single aspect of governance in Nigeria today, what would it be and why?
Well, my of course there is a lot to be reformed about governance, about our inequality. What I would, by way of just homily, by way of sermon or admonition, is that people should put the fear of God, at the uppermost of what they are involved in. When people realize that there is God and that the will of God is what should be done in whatever office, public or private, then it will make a whole lot of difference for us as a nation. The rat race that we experience in Nigeria these days, that people are just embarking on, crazy acquisition, and people should. What I will advocate is people should go for extra mundane riches. Riches that find in material wealth. But in terms of being able to be of benefit, and service to humanity in your office. That is it. So my admonition is that people should put the fear of God, at the uppermost level of their consideration in public office.
All right. As we conclude today's edition of Your Stewardship, we have journeyed through the life, leadership, challenges, achievements, and reflections of a distinguished legal practitioner and public servant, Dayo Akinlaja, SAN. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. On behalf of the entire production team, led by Femi Ayekomilogbo and the associate producer, Obi Chukwemeka Ote, thank you for sharing this moment with us today. Join us again next time. I am your host, Remy Allen. Remember to serve responsibly. Bye for now.